Yeah, you're just, yeah, okay.
All right, cool.
All right, I think I got it going here. I think it says recording.
Yep, it's recording.
All right, we good? All right, welcome everyone to the What the Fans Don't See podcast, episode 3. This is your host, Nick Simi. We have two legendary friends of mine that need no introduction, but I'll let them introduce themselves. We have Clay Raterman, we have Jackson Hayes. These are two very, very near and dear friends, like I mentioned. We went through the Ohio State walk-on process together, the experience, the journey, the highs, the lows. So welcome.
Let's go.
So Clay, kind of start us off here. We'll go through the original, background. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll start with Clay, and then we'll move to Jackson. So tell the people a little bit about what you got going on and how you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Clay. I am from Dublin, Ohio, I guess you could say. So yeah, from Dublin, Ohio. It's a little suburb outside of Columbus. And like Nick said, went to Ohio State and was a walk-on with Nick and Jackson here. Funny little background on ourselves. Jackson and I actually went to the same high school. So we played football together before we went to Ohio State. Jackson actually went to a different college. And then I coincidentally ran into Jackson again at a tryout to walk on at Ohio State. And then, Nick, the way that you and I ended up meeting was actually in the gym at JO North. So
that's why I said in episode 2 that is the best gym on Ohio State's campus.
Oh,
so whether you've been to Ohio State or not,
dude, I think they changed it or something, but
I know.
Topic for a different time. But
right.
Anyway, so I went to Ohio State. I am currently living in Austin, Texas, and really big into entrepreneurship nowadays.
Very cool. All right, Jackson.
Cool. I'm Jackson Hayes. As Clay already said, I am also from Dublin, Ohio. Walked on at Ohio State after quite a long journey of college bouncing and injuries, 2 shoulder surgeries, 2 colleges later. Ended up walking on at Ohio State. After that, I did a year internship with the strength and conditioning department at Ohio State. Worked with a variety of different teams there in the strength and conditioning department. And then now I run my own strength and conditioning, personal training, programming company called Relentless Train. And then I'm also at a gym called Athletic Republic as the GM. And I train youth athletes out of there. So just kind of doing my own thing along with working at another place. So, life's rolling.
Yeah, guys, real quick, Jackson, the shoulder surgeries just triggered. Do you guys have any lingering injuries from either college football or high school, like any of your football careers?
Nick, do you want to go with me? All right.
Go ahead. I have my answer, but go ahead.
So my shoulders are actually really good. I don't know how, but I never really have any shoulder issues anymore, but I'm obviously very injury prone. So going back to high school, I tore the Liz Frank tendon in my foot, which basically when you step down, your feet or your toes spread apart, and it's the ligament that brings them back together as you come off the ground. So I tore that ligament. And so I have a screw and a plate in my foot, and it just kind of limits my ankle mobility. And so what I've kind of figured out after going to physical therapists and stuff afterwards is that's what's causing my right knee pain. Even though my left foot is the one that hurts, it's because it's causing extra pressure on my knee. Just it's only when I sprint. I can squat, I can jump, I can do whatever, but it's only when I sprint really hard my knee bothers me, and it's because of my foot. So that's been the biggest lingering injury that I've had. Okay. Shoulders are good. The foot's even good. Just little limited ankle mobility, and it's kind of putting some extra pressure on my knee when I run. So that's about it.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is that Jackson is wanting some physical therapy services from yours truly. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
That's
close.
I'm honored. I'm honored. You just had to say it. You had to come out and say it. You didn't have to say it like that, right?
Yeah. Nick, what do you have? Do you have anything?
So I had torn my MCL my senior year of high school. They haven't really had any issues lower body wise. My right shoulder still gives me some issues. I had my first surgery done in 2010. That was my sophomore year of high school. And then I had my second labrum tear and surgery in 2013. That was when I was at Ashland University playing football there. To this day, I think it was something that like I wouldn't have changed anything. I would have still have gone through the surgeries and the rehab process. But I'm kind of living with it now through those surgeries. Again, not saying that those surgeries cause anything that I'm dealing with now directly, but I have like really bad arthritis in the shoulder. So I had like instability in the shoulder. They went in, they had to kind of screw and tighten down the capsule in the joint. So that caused increased pressure within my shoulder itself. And so now it's kind of something where my range of motion is pretty limited. If you see me and you're like, hey, you want to play catch? I'd be like, all right, I got to warm up the shoulder a little bit. I sound like a 50, 60-year-old man. But other than that, I think in the grand scheme of things, I didn't have to deal with any concussions.
Yeah, I wouldn't change. Going back to that, I wouldn't change anything. There's no way.
Yeah, I just have shoulders as well. The dislocated shoulders. Which honestly, they don't bother me that much, Jackson, to your point. I don't really notice it that much. Sometimes like when I'm benching or like actually doing jujitsu or like Muay Thai, I've sublexed them, like re-sublexed them several times, which is really annoying. But other than that, like I don't notice it that often. And then, I don't think I had a concussion when I was in like 8th grade from lacrosse. And that was actually a pretty bad one, but I don't notice anything from that either. So I've been pretty good, to be honest.
It kind of makes me think, and I've gotten this question a couple of times from athletes that have endured injuries recently, whether it's high school or college. Let's say if they're a high school athlete, they want to continue with college athletics. If they're a collegiate athlete, they want to continue their career. They might have aspirations at the professional level. Like, what would you guys say is like the biggest advice for someone that immediately has an injury? Those first couple days, weeks, like what would you kind of tell them? Because I get the question of like, hey, I don't know if I can see myself doing this again. And I think that's a very loaded topic and thing to kind of unpack. There's many layers to it. But kind of like, how would you address that to someone that might have these, big goals and aspirations, but just kind of trying to overcome the mental hurdle of having an injury that might require surgery or not, but something that's going to keep them out of their sport for some time?
You want to go, Jackson?
Yeah, I can. I mean, that honestly was probably the biggest thing for me was like the mental aspect of it, just because like you give everything you have to these sports and then it's like taken away in an instant. And so we'll get into this later about when we're done with sports, but at that age in high school, you're not done with sports yet. I think it honestly helps you find other things that you're interested in and can help you grow other interests. And going back to, I'll go ahead and start on it now, is like the reason that I love strength and conditioning and really got into the weight room was because I couldn't play. I've spent more time in my career preparing to play than I've ever spent on the field. And it's because of those injuries that I fell in love with that. I had really good PT staff. I had a really good strength and conditioning coach, really good strength and conditioning coaches at Ohio State. And that's what's really helped me like evolve in that world, is it helped me find something that I could still do related to sports, but it not actually playing that sport anymore. So I think it can help you find other paths that you can follow and know that like that sport is not the end all be all. And I mean, you kind of have to use the saying, like, you got to find something positive in every situation. Right. So like, yeah, it sucks that, and like, it is going to suck for the first couple of weeks. Like I just sat on my couch and did nothing, but eventually it's going to pay off later in your life. That's all I can really say about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think if you get injured, like, and Nick, are you asking like, how does someone make the decision if they want to continue with their sport, or what exactly was the question?
I just think more so like kind of the shock. Let's say an athlete has had a pretty big injury, and they kind of like don't know where to turn. They, like we have kind of talked about, athletics have been a big part of our lives and then kind of defined who we were at a young age, especially in high school, or maybe in the early ages of college. Like, what would what is your insight now, like kind of going through some injuries, going through a successful high school and collegiate career? What would you kind of turn around and say, like, yeah, if I was in their shoes, this is what I would kind of tell them, like kind of maybe it's a pick me up or words of advice. Again, I know it's maybe a little broad, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, it certainly depends on the injury, right? Like,
yeah,
what's the injury that the person's, because like there are, situations like, not only season ending injuries, but there are career ending injuries, like reasons why people would not be able to play again.
right.
Or in certain scenarios, they have to make up their mind, is this worth even doing again? Like, is this worth recovering from and coming back and trying to play again? And so, yeah, I think it just depends on what the person, I think it allows you to take a step back from what you're doing. And whether you know it or not, you were probably moving a million miles an hour and, haven't had probably a lot of time to reflect. So I think when you get injured, it's a good time to reflect and figure out, what is it that your goals really are? Like, what do you want out of this sport? Why are you playing this? It's like, what do you love about it? What do you not love about it? What's your goals moving forward with it? And it just gives you a chance to reevaluate your priorities and not only your own health, but in that sport and in life and what you want to be doing. So I think if you just take it as an opportunity to reevaluate, and like Jackson said, find other things that you're, potentially interested in. I think that's a really good use for it. And if you're dead set and your lifelong goal is this specific sport and you have this one thing in mind, like a lot of us have had, there's usually a way to find your way back into that sport with enough, determination and obviously depending on the injury. But yeah, I think too, like when people are going through that, they are, part of their identity is hurt, right? Because they're known as this athlete, or they're known as, doing this thing. And it can be a shock to some people if they're not able to be that person anymore, or at the level that they were doing it at. And so I think it's a great time, like I said, to reflect and to kind of realize that's not the only thing in life.
Last thing with that. So I'll just also say, like, yeah, it helped me find other avenues that I enjoyed doing. But if you know that sport is really, really what you want to do, I'm not telling people that they have to keep pushing. If you decide that you want to stop, then stop. But I've done both. I'll just share, like, when I had my foot injury, I decided I wanted to keep playing. That actually is a career-ending injury for a lot of people. Santonio Holmes ended his career with that injury. It's very hard to, like, get your speed and agility back up from that injury. It's very hard to cut. It's very hard to accelerate. It's very hard to put extreme amounts of pressure on. But I ended up still being able to do that after I determined that, like, I'm not going to stop playing. And then with the shoulder injuries as well, I took a full 2 years off of football. I transferred to Ohio State planning to not play football. I quit. Like, I was like, I'm done. It's not worth the time anymore. I've had 2 years in a row of shoulder surgeries. I've had 2 6-month rehabs. I'm done. And I decided, 6 months later that I couldn't live. Like, I didn't want to go to school without it. I really missed it. Like, this is my only opportunity. I'm still 22 years old. This is my only opportunity to ever play this sport again. I'm going to give it a go. When I walked on the team, they do the physicals, and the doctor basically had to go get my MRIs on my shoulder from my old doctor. And they told me, they were like, you should not play football again. If you want to play on Ohio State's team, we will allow you to, but you have to sign this agreement that if you get hurt again in your shoulders, that we are not responsible and we will not pay for your surgeries. So that was a risk that I was willing to take because I knew that was what I wanted. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity that I was presented with and that I honestly earned. And so I, pushed through it and kept going. So it's not, don't take not saying it's the easy way out, but don't let people say, oh, well, you should probably stop. Like, there's other ways that you can persevere through it as well. Don't just let people tell you that you need to be done.
Yeah, no, it depends on what you want, right? Like
Right.
nothing could have stopped the three of us from figuring out a way to walk on. On the flip side, you give anyone else an one little excuse or an out, and they're done. And
Right.
so it just depends on the person and what their real goals are. If your heart's not in it and your goals aren't, then yeah, probably not for you to go to try to claw your way back and risk your health. Because if your heart's not in it, your health's more important, right? Like if you're not in it to, for some bigger reason or for, it's like a massive desire of yours, then why would you risk your health anyway? You know what I mean? It's like, so yeah, just make sure you're I think aligned in what you want and the actions that you're actually taking.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with what you guys both said. The fact, like, taking a step back, evaluating what you really want, and those can be factors that might be intrinsic that come within that motivate you. It can be family values. They can also be extrinsic, right? So some of those things that we might chase, like quote, fame and fortune. So it's really trying to evaluate why you're in it. Like, is it more to say, hey, this is what I'm doing, and telling your friends? Or is it something that you find purpose in? I think there's
clout chase.
It's only one conversation that you can have. It's a conversation with yourself. I think another thing too, that, I wish I had the insight at a young age or younger age. It's crazy saying that because I'm 26. I feel so much older, but I think one thing is that it's very easy to isolate yourself when you first have an injury. You kind of go through the stages of grief that you might hear about. And the first one is like, it's kind of like the why me. And I think, like I said, you can get and kind of put yourself in a place mentally of, like, hey, I don't deserve to be happy in this sport. Like you said, you might start bargaining with yourself. In terms of the hardships that you've dealt with in the past. I don't really know what this is going to be for in the future. So I would say if there's any way that you can surround yourself with your teammates, with your family, with your friends, I think that's probably the most important thing, because they'll be the guiding light, or they'll be that North Star to direct you into whatever that path is for you in the future. If, say for instance, if you're on a team and you have the ability to talk with your coach and say, hey, I might not be physically on the field right now, but mentally I still want to get those reps in. I'd love to travel with you. I'd love to maybe fill a coaching role of some sort. Like, again, trying to find some positive experience out of it that you can apply towards in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you can get better like when you're hurt. You can get way better at certain things. You just have to reallocate your energy, and it's less about physical and more about the other things that you're doing.
Exactly. And another thing too, again, I know I'm kind of backtracking on some things you guys mentioned. I might have done this, and I'm actually really interested talking with people now. When you go and introduce yourself, right? People will say, for instance, me, when I was younger, I'd be like, hi, my name is Nick. I play football at Wadsworth, Ohio, Wadsworth High School. It's like I immediately say the things that I think identify me. I don't say, again, it's not to bolster brag, but like I would like to think that I'm caring, I'm compassionate, I'm a hard worker.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I immediately go to, football or basketball or track. It's like these things that I feel proud to talk about. And so like it kind of goes back to the identity standpoint of there's a lot of weight, right? When I say, hey, my name is Nick, I am a this. So
like back to your point about like why are people doing it? Like there's a ton of people that want to walk on to a football team because of those the reasons completely outside of football. They want the clout, they want the attention, they want that status, they want the recognition from friends and family again. They want a lot of exterior stuff, which those things are part of it, which is great. Like they want the brotherhood again. They want that closeness. But if your identity is wrapped in that specifically, and that's the reason why you're doing it, we've seen it. We saw it with a ton of people that tried to walk on as well, or just other people on the team. Like that typically is a recipe for disaster if that's the only thing your identity is wrapped into. But to your point, like when people ask you asked us at the beginning of this to introduce who we are and a little bit about ourselves. most of the time people say what they do for a living as who they are, which it's because you don't really have any other ways to describe who you are other than, the things that you're doing. But, to your point, it's not who you are isn't what you do necessarily. So it's like, but what are you supposed to say when someone asks you that question? Yeah, hey,
I don't know.
I'm a person. I'm really like,
yet.
Here's my qualities. You know what I'm saying? Like,
here are my 5 best qualities.
Yeah, that'd be even weirder. Yeah.
If I said, hey, I'm the next guest on this show, he's energetic, he's a hard worker, he likes to have fun, people are going to think I'm talking about a dog. Like, likes to play fetch, likes to be outside. Like, okay, all right.
But like when someone asks you, like, yeah, so who are you? Like, or someone's trying to introduce you, they try to like tell people like what you do, or they try to tell you the most. Like if you were to introduce me, Nick, you'd probably like try to say the best things that I've done or whatever, about like some elevated things. That would be a nice thing to do about someone. But it's like, yeah, other than that, these are just descriptors of people. And so when people are like an NFL football player or a college football player, or even in high school, they're, a really big part of the team, they probably want to use that as like, hey, yeah, this is who I am. Like, this is what I do. So when they lose that and like they're no longer a part of that, they're like, who am I? They're having an identity crisis. Like what's my value now? So yeah, I think people are deriving their value out of the things that they're doing. And it's not always, that's definitely not the only thing.
Yeah. And I mean, to kind of segue, I have another question I want to open up to you guys, maybe putting you on the spot a little. But when you're going through different endeavors and you guys have these goals, you guys have things that motivate yourselves, you guys are trying to operate at a very high level. Let's just take, for instance, when you're in college and you're making that intrinsic decision, that internal decision to say, I want to walk on. What motivates that decision? Like what, not only motivates the decision, but a step further, did you guys have a goal? Like saying, let's say I walk on, I made the team. Like, what was your goal throughout that year of eligibility that you had, if any? Maybe that might have been goals that you created while you're already on the team. For example, it could be like playing time, things. I don't know kind of what it was going through you guys' head.
The list was like forever changing because you like at first you like make it and like you're on this like huge high and you're like, dude, I'm gonna start, like this is
awesome. Well, that's your only goal, right, Jackson? Like your only goal was I just want to make the team. I talked to my brother about this. Like the only vision I ever saw of playing football at Ohio State was making the team. And then once I made the team, it's like, what the hell just happened? You just get like, it's a completely different universe from the journey. Like we all had a long journey of like things in life before we had that decisive moment where all of us got the phone call and it's like, you're on the team, like that epic, crazy moment that you feel like the weirdest emotions of your life. But before all that, it's this long journey and there's this incredible ending, but really it's just the beginning of the next journey. Yeah. It's like the second you made it, it was like day one. You show up and you're about to get just destroyed. It's like, it's a whole nother like just journey that you start on.
So going back to, the main goal was to make the team. Then once you
same.
You're like, okay, like, dude, I obviously now I can compete with these guys. Like I'm going to start, I'm going to get this much playing time. Like I want to get on special teams. And it started out as that. And then like you go into the first day of like workouts and you're like, these are some dudes.
Yeah.
These are some like 5-star like freaks. And then like slowly like your ego just starts to like as you keep going. And it's not like your confidence is shaken really, but it's just like, all right, this is a little bit harder than I thought. All right, well, now this is a little bit harder than I thought.
Yeah.
And going down. And like eventually like I enjoyed the camaraderie and like, it started off with playing time. Then it was like make as many connections and friends as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was, use the resources that Ohio State is providing to you to the best of your ability, internships, connections with the front office, alumni associations. Like then like as it started to kind of shift, at least for me towards the end. Now at the beginning, it was still like get me on the field, get me on the field. But it started to shift a little bit more towards my life after football. Those goals went from playing time, special teams, scout team player of the week, whatever, to the other things that the Ohio State football provided for you.
But Jackson, I think all three of us have a weird warped perspective on that because of our timing. Like all of us didn't. We didn't have a lot of time to mess around really. Like we get in, we go to work, we try as hard as we can to do the best we can do, and then a year or two later we're out the door. So for us, we didn't really have the leisure of like, okay, let's set some goals and have the time to do it. And I think that was part of it. Like for me, same as you, Jackson and Nick, we all had this goal where it's like, make the team, whether we said it publicly or not. I mean, most of us kept it private considering how stupid we would sound if we would tell someone, yeah, we're going to go play football at Ohio State. Like almost, there's a very small percentage of people that make it happen. But the one thing I noticed between the three of us is we all only had that one goal. Like we all really wanted to make the team. What I see from like a lot of kids that like ask us questions, like younger athletes, is they're like, yeah, I'm like, I want to, go D1, make the NFL. And like they're thinking about like, they haven't even done step one. They're not even working out on a daily basis. And they're thinking about the NFL. And it's like, it's good to have really big goals like that. And I actually think I've made the mistake, like maybe all of us did, where we didn't dream big enough about our career at Ohio State, but you don't know what it actually looks like until you're on the team. And so as I look back, I used to tell my brother, like, I think I manifested everything I wanted, but I didn't dream big enough. And it's really not like that. It's really like I manifested exactly what I wanted. And then you have to reset your goal once you've gotten to that stage. So once we made the team, you have to now set new goals. But by the time we made the team, we were also like pumped that we actually made it, that, we rode that wave for a little while. And then, before we know it, we obviously, all of us probably had other goals, but we didn't have a long time horizon to achieve those goals.
Yeah, I think there's a level of, Clay, you touched on it. Like there's a level of gratitude and appreciation of having sports, not having it due to whatever circumstance, and then having it again. You gain a whole new appreciation, and that can be not just sports related. But yeah, I think, Clay, Clay and Jackson both, to get and make the team was such a shock to myself. Like,
yes,
you said, I thought, it was a dream, right? It was something that you would kind of talk about, but like, it was hard for me to kind of truly believe it when I would, when I told my parents and told my girlfriend. It's like, okay, yeah,
your name in the locker room,
right? Yeah, like I put it on such a huge pedestal that like when it happened, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, and then it was so much of, I wasn't planning to get on the team and have like other aspirations and goals. I was just shell shocked, and I was like, okay, all right. So my vision was like this. And as soon as I made the team, I was like, I have to go in and narrow it down and be very selective with, like what I'm saying when I'm at the facility. Like, I'm not going to go around saying, hey guys, my name is Nick, and I'm going to be a starter here. Like, yeah. I was more of like head down. And that might've just had time pass by. Like, I wasn't necessarily the one to always go out and reach out to, starters or guys that have been on the team.
But it was more so there for so short, right? Like, it's right. Like, had we, that was year, like imagine had we had, a couple extra years, I think our goals would start to be a little bit more. I mean, it depends if you get complacent, but I think we would have all gotten to that point where we would have had more clarity around what we wanted out of the situation. We were all thrown into this crazy circumstance, and we're like, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for
the fire, and everything's moving so quickly. You don't even have time to think. You have like, it's literally from 5 a.m. until 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Like, when do you have time to even think about it?
Yeah, I wasn't sitting down planning my goals at that stage. I was trying to survive spring ball and sleep inside the study hall area. Literally, Nick, I literally remember like we used to show up because as a walk-ons, you don't want to mess shit up. Like we were trying to do everything we could right. Like we didn't want to screw our, our opportunity that we had worked so hard for. And, like whatever it was, we had to do, I think it was like 8 hours of study hall per week. Like you had to go physically sit in a study hall and do homework for 8 hours. And like everybody used to do that thing where they would like check in and just leave. Nick and I were like sitting in there, literally like hiding under the desks, sleeping. Like we could have probably just left or whatever everyone else was doing, but we decided to like really do everything right and just, yeah. So we used to literally sleep under the desks in that thing. It's just.
So like first time walking into the facility, was there any doubt that creeped in your mind? Like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be here in a year. Like, I don't know if this is going to last. Like, did any of those thoughts or doubts kick in?
Once I was there was no way I was quitting.
Yeah. I
had to force me to quit.
Once that I got the opportunity, I was like, no chance I'm messing this up. I mean, like, yeah, I messed a lot of stuff up like throughout practices and stuff, but I was like, there's no way I'm not going to do something to mess this up. Maybe something happens outside of my control, but no chance that I was going to mess it up.
And what would you say is like, if you kind of were to look back, what was like kind of like your defining moment, like to the point where you're like, you felt that you like kind of earned your keep to call yourself an Ohio State Buckeye? Like, was it the moment you guys made the tryout, or was there a moment in winter workouts, spring ball, summer conditioning, fall camp, postseason, whatever? Was there a moment where you're like, yeah, like I earned this, and, I feel confident saying that I might not have put in a lot, a ton of playing time on the field, but what I do matters, right?
Just looking back, I think it's a build. I don't think there's a moment. I think it's a slow burn of like the three of us, especially, we never did anything wrong. Like that's like something to be proud of, right? Like we didn't miss a workout. We never missed, we were never late. We never, no problems with anything outside of football. We didn't have any, like, that's impressive. Like in terms of, if you think about the whole team as a total, pretty much everybody has something that goes.
It's not just the 9 people that walked on. Left. 2 of them, one was a marijuana, one was DUI. The rest, some of them were injuries, but there were at least 5 of the 9 who got in trouble in the first 2 months.
Out of our group alone, we're the only 3 that made it all the way through everything with 0 hiccups. And I'm not saying 0 hiccups in terms of like bad stuff didn't happen and it wasn't hard. 0 hiccups in terms of we personally didn't make the mistake. It was more so like
outside of football. Yeah, we made mistakes. We got ran over. We got whatever.
Oh, for sure.
Missed assignments in practice, but it wasn't like our grades were bad. We got in trouble for drinking. We had bad grades. We weren't late. We did everything that we were supposed to do.
No lack of effort on our end.
Exactly.
No lack of like responsibility on our end. But that's because it meant way more to us than it did to everyone else.
Sure.
Like all 3 of us grew up as Buckeye fans. Like we're all like, our families are Buckeyes through and through. Like everyone around us puts this team on a pedestal. So for us to be a part of like a legacy that other people built, we don't want to be the ones that mess that up. It's like, this is such a huge thing that we're lucky to be a part of. And I think, I don't think everyone has that perspective though.
And that like appreciation and admiration for the people that have come before them.
Exactly. Now, certain people do, but not everyone.
I know, at least for me, the reason why I didn't miss workouts or I wasn't late was because of our group chat and Jackson's involvement in the group chats. Back in the day, we had a group chat that dwindled down over time due to numbers, like Jackson alluded to. Jackson was notorious for asking when and where we had to be.
Thank God, though.
Speak up. Everyone was like, I don't want to ask. I don't want them to get mad at me. I don't care. Get mad at me. If I'd rather them get mad at me for asking than get mad at me for not being there. So
yeah, Jackson would like ask if he like should wear 2 left socks or not. Like, it was to the point where we're like, okay, well, we know we know what's going on. Jackson asked. It's got the Jackson always stamp of approval.
So I never had to. It's great.
Anytime,
we kind of carted him out. We're like,
you guys all had the
Jackson. ask him when workouts are. We don't want to, Jackson gets yelled at. No, he didn't yell at. But
there was, remember, I think we changed like Jackson, like numbers in Jackson's phone to pretend like we were the coaches one time just to mess with it.
I was pretty bad. We would get on with, especially that initial couple weeks of winter workouts. We'll kind of like walk through the season a little bit, or at least the timeline of college football. When we joined in January of 2017, we were split up in different groups sometimes towards the end, more towards spring ball and into the summer. But I would, people would go through the workouts before, and the workouts were pretty grueling, very intense, a lot, high energy, max effort every time you go in there, pouring everything you have. So there was like a little bit of a fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
If, Jackson or Clay would be in there first, I'd see them in the locker room and be like, all right,
see him dead on the ground and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, that's something that happens all the time. Like, there's times where you're not super motivated to go in there and lift, especially at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. You might be the first lifting group. You have no idea what's going to be happening. You might be, coming off a weekend where coaches are just kind of sitting there like, oh yeah, we're going to make them pay for not having a lot of energy last week. And so you're kind of going in, you're like, oh my gosh. So the first group will have all the inside information because they'll, the second group will be coming in the locker room to get ready to get changed. Guys are laying on the ground dead.
Yeah, bro, like, you guys are screwed.
Legs are up, vomit, half on their shirt that's crusted. They don't even care because they made it through the workout. They're sweating through 2 or 3 t-shirts. So anyways, it would be in the first group sometimes, and Jackson would be like, hey, what do we have going on? I would just start naming the most random exercises and bizarre things like, yeah, you got to climb to the top of this rope, and if you fall, they leave you there. Jackson's like, oh my God. Oh, he's checking his hands like, oh, I got smaller hands. How am I going to grab the – he starts going through the worst case scenario of the workout. I'd be like, I feel bad. Sometimes, I'd kind of lead them in a direction, and maybe it was just my weird sick sense of entertainment when I was hurting really bad. But I would try as much as I could to, say, hey, this is what's actually going on before he goes in there. Otherwise, I don't know, maybe I might have been helping you by telling you these really terrible scenarios. Because then you go in there and you're like, why am I not climbing the top of the
I will tell you, the only reason I really needed to know was whether or not I needed to take my pre-workout or not. If we were
that was it.
Jackson. If we were running first, I didn't want to take my pre-workout. If we were just lifting, I needed my pre-workout. I just needed to know. And then you guys would be like, oh yeah, we're running. And then we'd go in there to be a straight lift. No energy whatsoever, no caffeine. And then you'd be like, oh no running. I'd take my pre-workout, and then we'd have like 20 gassers, and my legs would just be pumped full of blood as I'm just like laying there on the ground.
Remember those sled push days? That was the low
yeah.
The box
you had to beat your time.
The field.
You had to beat your the box pushes.
No, I'm thinking what you're thinking, Jackson. I know what you're talking about.
The 3-man sled?
No, not this 3-man sled, just the regular weighted sled. You had to push it down and back on the bottom one. Dude, I almost puked every single time.
Those groups of 4, and you had to beat your time from the week before, or you had to do 2 more. That one?
Yeah. That for some reason, that exercise was just physically just makes you puke. I don't know what it is. It just like every time.
It's literally called the Prowler flu.
Yeah, because guys would be pushing and people would be sick. So they're like, oh yeah, you got the Prowler flu today. It'd be like a Friday workout. So kind of, touching on the training aspect of our time there in the winter from about January to late February, maybe early March, we had winter workouts and they had spanned Monday through Friday. We'd have like an upper body day on Monday, lower body Tuesday. We'd have more like kind of a conditioning or mat drill session on Wednesday with position drills. And then Thursday was another upper body day. And Friday was a lower body day. Once you guys are going through that, like mentally of the week that you had, of the exercises and how they programmed for the week, how would you psych yourself up? Like, how did you mentally go through the week? Like, did you view one day as easier than the other, or
Dude, I didn't think
how
about
did you kind of
any
like
days
navigate that
other
in
than the
mind?
day, just the one day we were on. I didn't even have time to think about that. You just wake up the next. Remember, we all had that running joke where like we never left the locker room. We just kept spawning back in on day one again. It was like every single day was like we respawned and nothing had changed. We just left and we just respawned again. And we leave the facility and we respawn back. Dude, that was real. Like, I don't know what was happening, but I barely even remember anything outside of football. Like, I barely remember like anything from that year, the years of just like all I remember is just being in that facility, like the feeling of sitting in the locker room with your friends, like before like lift. You're like, oh, here we go again. Oh God.
I mean, I wanted to know what was going on. You're 100% right about that, but I actually enjoyed the winter workouts and like didn't like have to psych myself up for those. It was the conditioning and it was the anything related to football that I didn't want to mess up.
Same. Dude,
like
same,
it was more like I would get more anxiety for like individual position drills with the linebacker than I would for like workouts. Like workouts, like, dude, it is what it is. It's miserable, effort. But like you gotta learn to just like love it and you just gotta go. But like the football stuff, like I just didn't want to like trip on my back pedal or like
dude, I was
that. Like it was just more that's where I would be like get more like anxiety.
Performance anxiety. Dude, I had that hardcore during any of the like drill because like if you you cannot like mess stuff up like in the middle of these like practices. Yeah. I honestly, I was the same way. Lifting, no problem. I mean, yeah, some of it's really hard, but like we've done a lot of hard stuff. But the practices, like I was saying, Jackson, like that anxious feeling, like of like, like, or like at the end, young guys, like, we're like, oh shit, like here we go. We're gonna have to like basically that means like the people who were like third, fourth string we're about to go in and play, and we have barely any clue what's going on in terms of the plays because we've been running scout team the entire time, which means we don't understand what the real offense or real defense and offense that we're supposed to be running is. I
think it's something too where like the weight room and why we gravitated toward it was our effort was a direct correlation with our performance. Like if you worked hard and you gave a lot of effort, you generally performed well, or at least you gained the respect of those around you. When you're on the field and something that demands a high level of skill, your effort, I can try really hard not to
doesn't matter
or mess up a bag or try to flip my hips or whatever, do some pass rush move. Didn't always result in me performing it well. I could try really, really hard and mess up really, really bad. So
and oftentimes the more you try hard, the worse you do, which is like even worse.
I will say though, it's better to fail going 100 miles an hour than it is to fail and not giving all your effort. So
I agree with that, but it also makes you look ridiculously stupid if you fail 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. But I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, definitely do everything with a lot of effort, but you're gonna get destroyed by everyone if it's like.
Once we got into spring ball and we were like, all right, we have like maybe 8 weeks under our belt.
That was the hard.
We're starting to put pads on. We're starting to put a helmet on. Like for me, that's when it really got real. Like it was like, okay, I'm going through these really hard workouts with a bunch of, badass guys and a great staff, awesome coaches, starting to learn the people around me. But it wasn't until I started to put the helmet on and cleats on, in its entirety when I was like, oh boy, like now I actually have to basically sacrifice my body.
During the winter, you're working collectively, like as a team, like these big dudes, these linemen, these other dudes are like helping you, encouraging you. And then it turns around and you guys are face to face and this dude's 6'7", 330 and
they don't want you to win.
Now, thanks for building me up, but now you're just like, then it's just a whole different ball game.
You're right. It's that level of competition, like the highest level of competition where I don't know if you guys ever felt this way, but it's really hard to have that team bond feeling in the winter when you're competing for livelihood. Like everyone that's in there wants your job or you want their job. And if you mess them up on a rep, you're taking an opportunity away from them to make it to the next level or to get on the field or to, play in that position. And when that happens, there's this weird there's a weird friction between everybody. Like everybody's at each other's neck because everyone's trying to, obviously start, play, get playing time because there's millions of dollars on the line. Like,
well, especially with like the whole environment that Coach Meyer created of the winner loser and like if we beat like a first or second stringer in any drill, automatic like they call him out
so hard.
Loser.
It
like,
wasn't a congratulation for
they don't say anything.
You got it was a wow, you lost to them. Like you lost to that guy right there. He's got a last name. I don't even know how to say his last name. Seaman.
I don't even know who that is.
Call my name the wrong way. They wouldn't be like, they'd be like, hey, what you winner?
And then
this guy. Like they
you also have those guys then that come up to you afterwards and are like, hey, bro, chill out. And
stop.
And you're like,
then you feel like an asshole.
Then you feel like an asshole. Like, I have to give 100% effort because if I don't, then I get yelled at. But then if I give 100% effort and beat you, then you get yelled at. It's like,
it's weird.
It's like a weird thing, but you're supposed to be teammates and brothers and help each other out. But like, I'm not going to help you out that way. I'm really helping you out by going as hard as I can and making you better. So
and like the other weird thing is you're in your group, right? Your position group. And those are like your closest teammates and friends. However, those are your biggest enemies and your biggest competition. Like the people that are in that same room for us as safeties, only 2 people are starting. Everyone else in there is just making those 2 people better. But, 6 out of the 8 of those people are hoping to go to the NFL and be starters. So, and then there's, the other 2 of us in there that don't really care and are, they're like, I didn't have the NFL aspiration, but like, the rest of those people, that's like their literal livelihood. That's their plan was to make it to the NFL. And, their whole life has been centered around that. And so it's like, just a weird dynamic of and Jackson, to your point, let's say like I try 100% and I beat someone. First of all, I'm not going to, even if I try 100%, I'm not going to beat everyone every time because they're way better. And in a lot of scenarios,
100% is better than your 100%. But like,
right.
Every once in a while you might.
Yeah. It just flip flops. Like sometimes you have a good play. Sometimes other people don't, but then you get into that weird game of like, hey man, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you going so hard or why, and you have to you just have to accept that it's going to be weird. It's going to be awkward.
You just kind of brush it off.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw that Deion Sanders kind of came out, head coach at Jackson State, and he had mentioned that athletes have learned how to practice. They practice to practice. They don't practice to be better at their craft. They practice to count the number of reps in a period, or count the time on the clock, or, they've practiced to negotiate with the teammates on the other side. Like, hey, don't go as hard. Like that is the practice of now, and I'm guilty of it, of course, but it's almost, it's opened my mind.
Everybody is. Yeah.
To where, I'm sitting there, maybe in clinical rotations or, even in a job, and instead of being like, counting the patients, like how many do I have today? Or, how long do I have to work? It's like, wow, like that's so true. It's so relevant even now outside of sports. But I thought that was kind of something that hit home and goes along with what you guys were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, to that point though, Nick, like the practice, like Deion Sanders was basically saying in that, like he practiced to be the best in the world. And like his level of practice was different than, what people are doing now. And I think a lot of that comes back to like, what are your goals? Why are you doing it? And like, what's your vision for yourself? Like if you see yourself, Nick, as like the best physical therapist in the entire planet, you're probably, and you have a very specific goal on what you're trying to accomplish and how to get there. And those patients are leading you towards that. You're probably going to have a different level of participation in that process than if, this is just a job that you're doing to get to the next step to do something else.
Or it's like the paycheck or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I think Deion Sanders, like, I get what he's saying, but there are a lot of people that are in these ecosystems that don't have his mindset and his vision and his goals. And it's tough. It's like, how do you cultivate that? Like, maybe that's not the sport for you, or maybe it's not how do you cultivate that level of desire and belief in yourself that you can reach those highest levels to where you don't, have a practice where you're like, I'm just kind of counting the reps to get this done.
How would you guys describe like the culture and the atmosphere like during our time? We can't really speak to our, as much as the time with Coach Ryan Day, but with Coach Meyer, I feel like everyone that he surrounded himself with was the best at what they did. And they were so invested in us as people. Very much tough love environment, but it was very successful. Like, how would you guys kind of describe it to others? And the culture, and, how would you take that, right? Like, you guys are both going into endeavors on your own, hopefully maybe having staff in the future. What are you taking from that? Like, what are you taking from maybe your position coach or Coach Meyer or Coach Mick, the head strength coach, and even others in the support staff? Like, I guess, what are you kind of taking from it now?
Just the standards, like the high standards that they set, like that degree of excellence, I think makes people always a little bit uncomfortable. But like, I also think that's also, a big responsibility for success. Like, if you're going to have that crazy high of standards, a lot of people are not going to meet those standards, or they're going to need to be brought up to those standards, in which case everyone's going to be uncomfortable. But if you have the right leadership in place that everyone's enforcing those high standards, then I think in those scenarios it works. But it's a hard balance between like having to enforce those standards upon people versus people wanting to do them themselves, and like finding the right people. Because it goes back to like, the coaching styles of like, more of a brotherhood loving relationship versus more of a business type of environment. And I think the best is obviously kind of a mixture of the two, but it's really hard to get that down, I feel like, for anyone.
Yeah, definitely you have the high standard of excellence, like way up here. And then you have like everything is done at the like most intense level that you can think of. Like, it's not like you can easily just get the job done that he's asking you to do. Like, you could get it done without being that intense, but it's like everything is just like do or die. Like,
remember the med ball throws?
Yeah, like everything, like you could just throw them, but like everything is done. Like, if you're a strength and conditioning person out there, at like a 10 RPE, like everything is done at like the
10 intensity
hardest,
level.
10 intensity level. Like the hardest thing, like it could be the easiest like thing to accomplish. I don't know what it is, but it's like you have to sprint onto the field. You can't just like jog. You can't just walk. You have to sprint, or it's like you have to get to your meeting and you're like power walking to like be there. Like when they'd be like team meeting and you like go to the team meeting room, it wasn't like and just like waddle your way down there. It was like you had to go.
Everything is to that intense level.
Everything is to that intensity level. It's watching film. It's lifting. It's practice. It's like, I don't even like going upstairs to like eat. Like, I felt like I just had to like wolf my food down. Like, it was just like, there was no time to just like relax. Like, it was always just like, go.
Yeah. They had it set up, that way for sure. Like, that was, it was interesting. Like I was saying with the med balls, like we used to do these, like those med ball throws at the wall. And I remember getting screamed at because I wasn't screaming loud enough when I was throwing the med ball.
It had nothing to do with your med ball throw. Like,
I was throwing that ball hard as shit, but they wanted me to scream louder as I threw it. And I felt awkward because it was so inauthentic to yell as I was it just, I didn't need to yell to throw the ball as hard as I could. And so me, like internally, I was struggling with like I was yelling as loud as I could, but I just like, I don't know. I felt fake. I felt like I was faking it by yelling, but you have to do everything to this crazy intense level. And there's a benefit to that. Like, we all benefited from seeing an environment operate at the highest intensity for forever. Like there was never a day you walked in there was low intensity.
Couldn't have it. Like you couldn't have a bad day either. Like
No.
it was like it was so intense and at such a high standard that like you couldn't allow for a bad day. Like it was, and you felt like you always had to do your best. Like now, like being in the regular world, like if I really wanted to, like I could just like not try today. But like since it's been instilled in me from doing this, like to just like you always have to pour everything in. Like, and it was just like everyone around you was doing it. So if you didn't, you were the outcast. And that's kind of like building that culture wherever you're at. Like you don't want to be, you want to make it so that like not everybody's being lazy and you're the outcast for working hard. It was like everyone around you was working so hard that if you were being lazy, like you were the outcast. You know what I mean? That's kind of how it felt being around that level of excellence.
Yeah. Like I think like if I were to kind of summarize what you guys had mentioned, one is being able to find the right people to surround yourself with. And that's not just from like a business standpoint or professionally, but also like, you know, we might not all share the same exact field of expertise professionally, but, you know, we're going to surround ourselves with each other because we push ourselves. And with that, we had found that we can take ourselves to a level that we never thought we could get to. So Coach Meyer and his staff, you know, not just coaches, but also the support staff around, they got us to a level where we're like, holy cow, like, you know, physically, mentally, being able to prove that to ourselves, we're able to take that and be like, you know, if we're able to invest that into the next person that we have the opportunity to work with, right, and show them like, hey, you know, I'm going to pour everything I have into you. I'm going to invest into you, but this is where we're going to get you. And you prove that to them. You give them that. That is so powerful and empowering to that person that they're going to work even harder for you, right? It's almost like this loop where it's not like, hey, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to invest in you because what is going to happen is you are going to get better in XYZ reasons, not selling them, you know, a bunch of empty promises, but it's almost like giving them tangible things that they can work on, and it betters themselves both inside what they're doing. So for us, both football, right? Physically, weight room, and then what we can take away from it. Like, you know, it's even in the endeavors that, you know, Jackson, you know, the thing you did the other day, 315 pounds for as many times as you can in 2 minutes. You know, Clay and I have done more endurance endeavors with like marathons and ultras. So it's like to take ourselves to this point, we're like, wow, like it's kind of unlocking, and it's very, I think the word, like I mentioned, it's empowering. It's like, wow, like I can do this. Like, you know, and for you know, the people that you work with or the people that you employ to have that feeling, like that creates buy-in too, right?
I think too, like I would not say that when I played for Ohio State that I was in the best physical shape that I've ever been in. Like I wouldn't say that by any means, and nothing against the sports staff there. I love those dudes, but it was more the nutrition for my part anyway. But anyway, the biggest thing that I think I grew there was my mindset. Like I now have been through camp, been through winter workouts, been through mat drills, been through spring ball. Like anything that I do, I just revert back to that. And I'm like, nothing is as hard as this. So like,
you got them in the cookie jar. You're like, you know, what are you going to do to me now?
Yeah. So it's like, I have this, it's created this mentality and this mental, like one, to give 100% effort into everything that you're doing. And two, like, there's just nothing, like, I feel like it's not like I'm invincible or unstoppable, but it's just like this, why would I not be able to do that? You know what I mean? There's got to be proper training. You got to learn things along the way. Like you might have to take a bunch of different steps before you can do it. You can't just jump in and do it. But if I train for it, if I learn for it, if I study for it, whatever it is, I feel like there's no reason that I can't accomplish it. And that's all come from being a part of that program.
Yeah. I mean, you proved it already to yourself. Like I think surrounding yourself with those all bunch of people that have that same mindset is really important, because all of a sudden everything around you is demanding a level of excellence that is really uncomfortable. But because everyone around you is also doing it, you're like, well, shit, this is just the new normal. Like, this is what we do. Like it's the same thing, Nick, where like we never would have been able to run. I never would have been able to run 100 miles had I not been with you and Derek. And there's a literally proof of that because we tried it again with Derek and me and another friend, and it didn't work. I mean, what I'm trying to say from that is like there's a certain level of excellence that we can like pull out of each other too. It's like Nick, like we went through all this other stuff together. So when we're sitting there 80 miles in and you're still going, I'm like, well, I mean, like if he's still going, I can still go. And then when you're hurting, if I'm still going, you can still go. And we can pull a crazy high level of excellence that we probably couldn't do just, without, those other people that have that same mindset around.
100%. It's about who you surround yourself with. Like for like the 315 thing that Nick was talking about, like I did that with another guy that walked on, Zach, who's like now my business partner. I wouldn't have got the amount of reps that I got without
you
him.
get that hype.
What'd you get?
Like
50, 45, 44?
44.
That's insane.
Yeah.
But like it's just like you don't like yes, it gave me the confidence that there's like I believe that I can achieve these high level goals, but also like that you can't achieve those goals without your like inner circle of people like supporting you and helping you, and you have to make sure that those inner circle of people that you've created are in that same mindset and high level of
they have that standard, like that
high standard. You have to make sure that they have that same high standard that you have.
So talking about that circle, right? Surrounding, ourselves with each other. Probably during the most important part of the calendar year of our time at Ohio State is fall camp and the duration of the season. So with that, so not just kind of going through, each day per se, but I want to ask the question, what don't the fans see during that time? So like the preparation. So let's say fall camp or during the week, like what don't they see? They say the culmination on, college football Saturdays. They see the shoe packed with 100,000 people. They see people on the sidelines, calling plays, performance on the field, positive, negative, whatever. They see the score, all the stats. What is something to you to be like, this is what you don't see? Like, this is not something that is broadcasted.
I just don't think that fans understand the extreme attention to detail and the extreme amount of effort that has to be given doing things at that high level. Like, it's easy to run a sprint 100 miles an hour in a straight line. It's not easy to run 100 miles an hour in a straight line, plant, turn, find the ball in the air while you're tracking your man, while you're doing these other things. You have to be able to do that at the highest level, and you have to do it 1,000 reps for it to become so ingrained in your brain that it's just natural. So like you see it and you're like, man, that guy's a great athlete. Man, that guy, is a great natural athlete. No. Yeah, he might be a great natural athlete, but that came from the 999 reps that he did of that from freshman year to senior year that he's finally playing. Like the amount of pure volume at intense reps is insane to me.
Because every single repetition during practice is filmed, and from many different angles. So you can, as soon as, we had a period style practice. So we had periods ranging from 1 to about 18 to, 20 plus at times. Each one was about 5 minutes, depending on the period, might be 8 minutes for more kind of team settings. But every single repetition is filmed, it's graded, and it's also gone over in meetings. So it's like Jackson mentioned, there's a high level of detail. Every single practice is scripted from walkthrough to stretching at the end. So it's not like, hey, today we need to work on our running. It's like, no, we already have scripted plays. We have scripted plays for warm up. We have scripted plays for the passing offense, the pass defense, one-on-ones, inside run. It's installed very meticulously from the coaching staff brought together. They have their plan. I can't really speak to that because not necessarily our experience, but it's like, hey, this is what we're doing. We only have so much amount of time, and it's jam packed. There's not like a time where it's like, oh yeah, let's just give this a try. Like wins, on a whim. It's like,
yeah, I don't think people realize too, like how much of a system this machine is. Like, it's like, I don't think they realize, number one, how much work really goes into it. Like, during camp, you are literally waking up at 5 a.m. and you're not back at your hotel until 10 o'clock at night. And you're just doing that every single day of the week, for, a long time.
It was like 3 weeks. It was like 19 days. We had to drop our keys off at the hotel. We couldn't leave. So we were at the hotel in Woody Hayes.
After an entire year of additional preparation. And also right after that, it's following with a whole season of additional effort. It's like it doesn't end. And so there's not like a break period during your time there, but it's also, the system, like what you guys were mentioning, like how orchestrated everything really is. People also probably don't realize, like, there's a lot of like, things throughout the game where there's intuitive decision making and changes you have to make and stuff, but there is a large plan in place of what you're going to try to do to solve the puzzle of the other team. And you guys are both essentially guessing against each other. So when someone sees the play that goes south, like, oh, that person sucks or whatever, there is so many other things going on. Like, you could have just called the wrong play and they could have called the right play, and it looks like an athlete sucked, but they got put in a terrible position.
Dude, there's so many different things that, like, now I analyze football on a different level. And, like, I'm sitting with people that, like, Joe Schmoes, no offense to your normal fans, but, like, they have no idea. And they're, like, screaming at the TV. And I'm like, dude, like, you really need to, like –
you'd have more compassion if you understood.
Idea. Like, for example, I was watching the Oregon game, and they had their tight end motion over, and our linebacker shifted. And then, so Oregon must have seen this, right? And so we're in man-to-man. They have the tight end slip out on a pop pass. Our linebacker leaves. They hand the counter the opposite way where our linebacker left the hole. And that linebacker sucks. I guarantee you it was written in his keys for the week in his game plan that when the tight end goes out, you have to follow them. He's in man coverage. And so, like, there's nothing he could do about it, but yet everyone is going to be screaming at this linebacker for doing exactly what he was told to do.
Yeah,
like, people don't understand the extreme amount of chess playing that is done behind the scenes.
Well, and like, they also don't realize, like, all this chess playing is being done to gain one step on your opponent. So, like, it's at such a high level that yes, athletes do make mistakes all the time. Like, that's definitely part of it too. And also athletes also make incredible plays all the time. But beyond that, it's like everyone's battling in these like little wars to get one tiny advantage, like one step on a receiver, or one step on a corner, one 1 yard of, a block makes all the difference and opens up a massive play. So when people like see these things happen, but this is like why it's entertaining. It's because it's fun to watch. It all seems very like unpredictable and crazy, and it is unpredictable and crazy. And so I think it's just people would have a lot more empathy for coaches and for players and for athletes if they understood that, first of all, the true effort they're putting in to making this, number one, entertaining for you to watch, but also they're trying to win and build a legacy for you. And so you like, it's not a lack of them not trying. If you think that they're not trying to do well for you, that's like, it's ridiculous. They've tried all year round for this to happen. You think that they're the most invested. So you sitting there as a fan, like getting upset when you see something bad happen, it's like you don't understand the level of real sacrifice they put into this. So they're just as devastated as you are. You sitting there screaming at them and saying they suck is only making things worse because you're hurting their confidence to do better the next time.
Yeah. And like, with the preparation that goes into it, not only at a coaching level, But as that kind of trickles down into the game plan, Clay Jackson and I, we would have scout team jerseys, and we, sometimes even too for the team up north, we were all decked out in the opposing team's colors, just to kind of replicate what it would be like in game scenario that week. But it's not just, you're going out there as scout team and you're like running random plays. Like, it is very much scripted. They have every single tendency from, how many times they run a, certain defensive play at a certain down and distance, at a certain time of the game, at a certain place on the field, whether it's on the right hash or the left hash. So there'd be times where, they're showing us, right? Like, there'd be a defensive graduate assistant GA or another coach that would be showing the scout team, like, hey, this is the play that we have to run. The lines are here, there, wherever. This is about how many yards. As we break our huddle, our scout team huddle, they have gotten their play on the offensive side. So when we go in there and, there'd be times where, let's say I was supposed to go maybe 2 steps forward and I was supposed to break down the line of scrimmage if I was like on an outside linebacker position or defensive end. Maybe I took 1 step and just crashed really fast, and I might have made a play, or I might not have been in the position they wanted me in. They would run it again because they have it down such in a like finite specific way that if I didn't take 2
he wouldn't
steps,
do that. He wouldn't do that.
Right?
They would. That's so funny.
So yeah, it would be like, there'd be times where just the natural, instinct of playing football kind of comes out, like the backyard, like, hey, I see ball, I get ball. And, that you kind of get yourself in trouble as a scout team player. If there was like an interception or a batted ball line of scrimmage, they'd be like, sometimes they'd be like, yeah, well, they wouldn't do that in that situation. That was
like,
that might
Nick,
have been like
you
a
made a play, they'd be like,
times.
yeah, they would say like literally what you're talking about is if you made a play, like they're running a play, you're running a defensive scout play, and you tackled the guy on the line of scrimmage or whatever, and you didn't do what their player exactly says in the script that they would do, they would rerun it because they'd say he wouldn't do that. And it's
right. That's what
but as a scout team player, you're like, yes, he would do that because I just did that. I'm sitting here doing it. So it's like this battle of like trying to figure out, what are these teams gonna do? And then also when you get in the game, you've read all this stuff about the tendencies, and then they just do something totally opposite. And you're like,
right. That was my thing. I was like, who says that, you guys are changing, we're, Ohio State's changing our game plan. We're throwing little wrinkles in. Who says that they can't do that for us, right? I mean, and it happens all the time, but that's just.
It's a chess match, man. It's got to be,
right.
I can't imagine being a play caller. Whew, that'd be tough.
No. But I think kind of going along with that, like going through fall camp and its rigorous schedule, going through the entire season, how was your guys' mindset going into the postseason where we were scheduled for the Big Ten Championship, and then USC weren't necessarily going into the quote college football playoff? As we kind of dwindled down our time at Ohio State, Jackson kind of touched on how his mindset started to change. Like, what was your thoughts going into the practices when we were getting close to like December, getting into Christmas?
At that point, like at least for me, I was exhausted. Like getting to that, like especially after we had basically a whole nother spring ball during the break between the last game of the season and the USC game.
That was rough. That was a long.
It was basically like a whole nother 15 days of padded practices.
Month.
That was rough. And it was just like in that time, like I felt like it was almost like I can't believe it went by this fast. And so like in those last couple like weeks, months, you're like trying to figure out like everything that you can milk out of this opportunity. So it's like, at that point we'd already decided like we weren't coming back. We were done. And so like, it was like, okay, what connections do I need to like make sure that I continue to keep? What do I like? And at that point, like I hadn't decided what I was going to do afterwards. Like I hadn't signed up for the strength conditioning internship. Yeah, I really had no idea. So I was kind of like, it was almost like, for me at least, panic mode. Like I was like, okay, well, 2 weeks, I'm done. What can I ask people here to like help me with in the next 2 weeks so that I don't come out of this, just with nothing. So
Yeah. I don't know.
you had more of a plan. You
not really. I never really thought about the end. I didn't really recognize. I guess I did in some ways know it was coming to an end, but I didn't realize how abrupt the ending was. Like I remember flying back home from the bowl game and being on the flight and like looking out the window and just like thinking back about the whole experiences that we like all the stuff that we went through and all the stuff that we had experienced and remembering like, wow, like this is like not my actual life. Like this, it felt like my life. Like this is my whole life because it's the only thing I knew. I just didn't think about anything outside of football. And then all of a sudden, once we landed and we were in that, I remember being in the locker room. Remember, Nick? We were like, oh, like we gotta take all of our stuff and like leave, like for good. Like we gotta take our stuff out of our locker and just leave. And I remember feeling
real quick to switch those thumbprints too.
No, it was literally like abrupt. Like we got off the plane, got to the locker room, and that was the last time that we needed to be there. Now, obviously, there were other things that like there was a couple other things we went back to for like the spring game and some additional stuff and whatever else. But for me, that time was like we picked our stuff up and I was done with my career as like my life just switched on a dime again. I went from being out of it to in it to out of it, and just it was very strange.
I remember like you graduated in the winter, right, Clay?
No, I graduated in May of 2018.
Okay, so you graduated. I did. I remember still being on campus, and I felt like
weird.
I feel like it was my first time like being on campus and going to class for a long time without having practice and other stuff to worry about.
Yeah.
I think I needed to go into EQ and like pick up something that I forgot or something. And like, it had only been like 2 weeks, it felt like, and I go to scan my thumbprint and it was like access denied. And it was like, that's when it really hit me that I was like, man, like I really can't just walk in here anytime I want anymore. And then I'd like go around to the front door and like go to get my stuff from EQ. But it was just like, it all happened so quick.
And like that last semester of college, like you were like kind of looking forward to it, but it just kind of flew by, and it just kind of like just was like, whoa, like real life starts now, and there was no transition really.
So like Clay and Jackson with that abrupt stop, I definitely felt that. Like I felt like there was closure because I was able to have sports again. It wasn't as kind of raw and like as open of a cut as I had maybe at Ashland or my injury experiences in high school. But there was an adjustment period again. So like, how did you guys find that transition from that level of structure and high intense regimen to the real world and like finding purpose outside athletics?
Dude, I think I'm still trying to figure it out. Like it's just an experience that you never get to have again. Like, so for people who are in it, like, I know it seems like it sucks a lot of times, but like, you got to realize like it's a very, 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 very small blip in your life. And while it feels like your entire life, because it's the only thing you know, it's not your whole life. And it's definitely going to come to an end. But in terms of like, I don't think I can give advice on like how to, transition right. Cause I think we're all still, I don't know. I don't know how to say like how to find the next thing you want to do. You just have to kind of try a lot of different stuff. And I think we're all still trying to find what's next for us in a certain way.
Yeah, I agree. Like I'm still trying to find my way. Like even as soon as like 6 months ago, I was like, I'm in really good shape right now. Like, should I like go like see if I can get a CFL tryout or something. Like there's always like that little like thing in my mind where I'm like, I still got it. Like I could still do it. So like it's still that like hard transition to where like we're still young enough to like I think I could still do it, but at the same time it's like that time has passed, and it's trying to like deal with that along with taking the experiences that we had and applying it to the other things that we're doing. And I think diving headfirst into some new venture with the same mentality that you had when you were playing sports has kind of helped me transition, like starting my training business. Doing the internship was huge for me. Nick actually was the one that hooked me up with that, so can't thank him enough for that. But I got to see college sports from the other side, from the coaching perspective. So it kind of gave me a little bit of a different insight. It connected me with some of the pro athletes that I'm training now. And like, there's just so much that has happened since then. But yeah, like the transition has been very slow, gradual. And I would still say I'm not, to that point yet where it's like I've lost.
But to your guys' points though, I think it's something where it's finding things that challenge you.
Right.
But also kind of make you nervous. You're excited, but there's a nervous to it. Like that's kind of how I felt. And so like taking that feeling of, finding purpose, that what you do matters, that there's a greater sense of just, hey, I put my name on this, but it means something more in the grand scheme. Like that's kind of what draws me to different experiences and endeavors. But I think it's, some people might say, oh, it's finding something that's competitive or, playing club, whatever sport, being in that environment sport wise, like that's definitely an option. I think another option is like I said, finding things that, hey, that might interest me. Don't let that thought go. Like, don't let that just kind of squash out. Like if you're thinking, hey, I want to start my own business. Again, I know there's so many different logistical things that go into that. And, it's not me advocating to, make any brash or immediate decisions that affect your life completely, but it's more so just like give it thought, write down like pros and cons, like what does that look like for you in your life, and thinking of different ways to challenge you than just sports. Like I think if you just constantly think that, hey, sports and that competitive side of me is the only thing and that's the best side of me, I think chasing that there's a danger. Like there's a level of
there's your
like
one
crash and burn to it, because if you chase happiness isn't a thing. It's finding peace. That's what I think now. Like it's finding peace in with what I'm doing. If I'm saying, yeah, I'm doing this in order to be happy, that means I'm not like currently happy, that I'm chasing happiness. But what I'm really doing is, hey, these things interest me. I'm taking opportunities as they come. When one door opens, I'm going to look in that door. Yeah, that's going to be the door for me. I go down that path. If it's not the right path, at least I'm, taking things as they go, because I think the experiences as you come out of football, if you only think sports, which you guys haven't, and that's why you guys have been successful in what you're doing. And I know it's even for me, it's a process of constant reevaluation. Like, is this the right thing? Clay, we talk about this outside the podcast, like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And then it goes to the point of just surrounding yourself with those people. But does that kind of make that's kind of what I have.
Yeah, I think you guys have done a really good job. Like you have taken that intensity and you put it into something else. Clay, it's into your entrepreneurial endeavors. Nick, it's into your schooling and into your PT and into the other things that you're trying to do. But both of you, unlike me, have done other sports and put your efforts into those. Like your endurance running, I think could be one of the things that you guys do to kind of I'm not saying it's coping, but it's like to adjust from being, you guys have done the endurance running. Clay, you're doing the jujitsu and fighting stuff. Like, I think that if you wouldn't have done that if you wouldn't have played football, or you wouldn't have had to make that adjustment. I don't think that you guys probably would have ended up ever doing that stuff.
Yeah, I think to Nick's point, you don't want to necessarily put yourself in a box in either position. Like you don't want to, when you're done, hang up the cleats and say, I'm never doing anything athletic again. And you also don't want to say, hey, I'm only good for athletics. So I got to go find the next thing and start fighting or, whatever else. I think it's a balance of like, what are you interested in? And to your point, Nick, finding stuff that makes you like, I think all of us are addicted a little bit to that anxiety feeling of like where we, like you show up for a workout and you're like, what the hell is about to happen here? That like you have to have a little bit of fear, not fear, but there has to be a level of pressure or of like, there needs to be a like a chance of failing for anything to be exciting, because if there's no chance of failing, there's no chance of big success either. Like you can't have a good success without the possibility of failure. And so I think the more that grows, like the bigger the failure might be, obviously the bigger the success might be. And those scenarios, all of us are apt to go choose the most extreme versions because it sounds the most fun for us. We've already done stuff that is like pretty severe in that regard. So like for us, it's probably a little bit of an addiction to like having like those high highs and the, consequently the low lows when you don't succeed at something like that.
I think you hit it right on the head with that.
Yeah, like we all want to go, like we even before this started, we're all talking about like, okay, what's like the next big like project we want to take on, or what's the next hard, really difficult athletic endeavor, or what's the next competition, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's nothing wrong with enjoying doing those things, especially if you have a healthy relationship with it and you can also, know when it's time to taper back and go explore a different interest.
Definitely. Well, I mean, I think we touched on a lot of different topics. But thank you guys for your time. It's always awesome to kind of relive those memories and, connect and talk with you, see what you guys got cooking up both in Austin and down in Columbus. Hopefully everyone that's, tuning in, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. We appreciate you tuning in to What the Fans Don't See podcast, and stay tuned for episode 4. And with that, peace. Thank you guys.
Deuces.